Jaggi of FanSided here with NFL expert Marcus Mosher as we talk about Senior Bowl week. Big time of the year for us, Marcus. We love to grind that tape. I know that you've been all over that. You've got articles popping up everywhere, all over the FanSided Network, fansided.com. I'm excited to hear what you have to say, and hopefully we can grind some tape together here soon. But some really interesting things, Marcus, and I would be remiss if I didn't start with this comment right here. Diego Pavia, get ready to learn running back.
Listen, yes, you're not wrong. He came in under 5'10". He was under 200 pounds. He's a very, very small quarterback. Well, at least he is right now. I gotta say though, he's been pretty good in these practices, like way better than I thought. Now there's some issues maybe off the field and with his personality. He's a day 3 pick. But he's actually been better than I thought. I would not be surprised he goes in the 6th, 7th round and somebody gives him at least a shot to be a quarterback.
You can't be a quarterback.
He's been good. That's the thing, though. He's actually been good at these practices.
But he's a pretty quality athlete, though, too. I mean, I think he ran for over 3,000 yards in college. Is somebody's going to flirt with that, right? Like, can he play running back? Maybe use him as a gadget player that can kind of throw from the backfield.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the option. You know, maybe you try to turn him into a slot receiver, or he's somebody that's on your roster or on your practice squad. I'm telling you, he's got a lot of touch throwing the ball down the field. He's probably the best deep ball passer of all the quarterbacks in Mobile. But you're right. Like, the options here are pretty limited for Pavia and what he can do, at the next level.
Marcus, let's talk winners here. And one of my favorite things to do during Senior Bowl week is to grind the tape on the O-line, D-line. I feel like, and I know we've had this conversation before, there's nothing more telling from Senior Bowl week, specifically during those 3 days of practice. How are your offensive linemen going to turn out? How are the pass rushers going to turn out? Because I think these are the best drills, best indicators of who might have success at the next level. I think we've seen it over the years. Creed Humphrey, Quinn Miners, some guys that were awesome during Senior Bowl. Yes. Gray Zabel, guys that were awesome during Senior Bowl week, that it translated 100% to the next level. Let's talk some winners here. And maybe we can start right here on the trenches. Who do you have as winners so far for Senior Bowl week?
Well, first of all, these drills are designed for the defensive players to look really good, right? Because you get these wide angles. You have basically 4 seconds to try to, win a pass rush rep. So it's really telling when an offensive lineman doesn't give up ground or doesn't lose very many of these reps because they're designed to fail. And I want to start with Jennings Dunker. I promise that's a real name. Offensive tackle from Iowa. At least he's expected to be an offensive tackle. He's been phenomenal this week. He's done a really good job playing right tackle. That's the spot he played at Iowa. But he's actually played some guard during the week as well over in Mobile. He's also worked at center. And he's just one of these guys. The more that you can do, the more appealing you're going to be to NFL teams. And again, I'm going to reference Gray Zabel from North Dakota State last year, who was a college tackle, played guard and center at the Senior Bowl, ended up being a top 20 pick. And I think a lot of people thought maybe that was rich. I don't think so now. He's the best offensive lineman for the Seattle Seahawks on a team that we think might win the Super Bowl. I think Jennings Dunker is somebody who came into this week as, a fringe top 75 pick. And Tommy, I would not be surprised if he finds himself in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, his film has been incredible. You cut that up as well. And just rep after rep, I mean, he's doing exactly what you'd expect that type of offensive lineman to do in this situation. And we've seen those guys. I mean, very Cody Mauch vibes from him, Marcus. Maybe it's the long flowing red locks out the back, but these guys, like we said, typically the ones that are impressive in Senior Bowl week tend to do really well. I think he's already 44th on PFF's board. Probably going to fly up draft boards here, I would expect, just like Gray Zabel did.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been probably the best offensive lineman. We've had a couple of really good ones. This is actually a pretty decent offensive line class at the Senior Bowl. It doesn't have, going back, like the Lane Johnsons or Eric Fishers or anybody like that. But I do think it's a lot of guys that are going to go inside the top 50, top 60 picks. Just a pretty quality unit here.
Anybody else catch your eye from the offensive line, Marcus, from either team? Rutledge? Was there anybody else?
Rutledge was pretty good. There's a couple smaller school offensive linemen that I think have performed pretty well. But honestly, Tommy, most of the talent here in Mobile is on the defensive
Mhm.
line. And let's talk about two first rounders or two likely first rounders. And we'll start with TJ Parker from Clemson, who was a guy that had a lot of buzz going into the 2025 season about maybe being a top 10 pick. The production was off the charts, has a down year, only 6 sacks after having 12 in 2024. Just wasn't the same player, but he goes to Mobile and he's beating every single one of these offensive linemen with power. There was one clip where he used a long arm and just bullied an offensive tackle, lifted him right up off the
Yeah.
ground. Not the most bendy or athletic pass rusher, but if you want a guy with like NFL power that can play defensive end, that can set the edge, that can stop the run, I think TJ Parker has a good chance to go inside the top 25 picks.
Yeah, definitely an interesting player, Marcus. Another name that I talked about with you recently, and just awe-inspiring for just how big he is, how well he moves. I mean that rip pull move. He's been winning as well, and that's Caleb Banks,
Mhm.
just a huge human being who's looked really impressive in some of these drills. And I kind of threw out that comp, Deion Walker. I mean, watching Walker at the Senior Bowl, a lot of similarities there between just how big you are and how well you move for your size.
I mean, he's a freak. I mean, he really is. He measured in at 6'6", 330 pounds, but he doesn't move like that. I mean, he moves significantly better. And you're looking, I mean, honestly, the kind of the comps that you're getting are like Jordan Davis, but I think he's got more pass rush moves than that. There's just only so many of these players walking on the earth, Tommy, that are this big
Yeah.
and that are that mobile. And I think you've got to figure out, okay, what happened in 2025? Was it all injury related? I don't know. But I think even with his lack of production, I think this guy's going to go really high in the draft because they just don't make very many of them like this. I think Caleb Banks has done a really good job at the Senior Bowl and rebounding his stock a little bit.
Marcus, what are your thoughts on Zion Young? Because when I watched that tape as well, and you talk about a guy that has the profile there, were you impressed with him for what you saw so far?
Yeah, he's another guy that I think has a lot of power, that's been playing well. Again, not the most bendy guy, but
Mhm.
super productive in the SEC. I think Zion Young is right back into that top 50 discussion. And as I said, this is a pretty good week for pass rushers. We didn't get David Bailey. Ruben Bain dropped out late. We should mention Mellow Height from Texas Tech, another guy that's very undersized but had a very good week rushing the passer. He actually, a lot of people expected him to come in at like 220, 225 pounds. He measures in at 234. He's an older pass rusher, but I think he's somebody that is right back into that, second, maybe third round discussion.
Yeah, needless to say, the height isn't there for O'Mello, and neither is the weight. That's such a terrible football pun. But Marcus, anybody else on the defensive line you want to move on to the next positional group?
For the most part, it's pretty good. Or a pretty loaded group, and we'll see that play out, on Saturday once the game happens. But yeah, I think between TJ Parker and Banks and
Mhm.
Zion Young and Mellow Height, it's been a pretty good week.
Anybody else you want to highlight as the big winners of Senior Bowl week here? Wide receivers, defensive backs. I know there's been a few standout names in those groups as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really the wide receivers here that have impressed me. There's no big names, no guys that you think are going to be, first round picks, but there's some really good players, including Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, who I think took over, the Senior Bowl a little bit. He's going to be the highest drafted receiver. He had a play during the team drills where he adjusted to a really poorly thrown ball down the middle of the field, tracked it over his shoulder. In a class that I think already has a lot of depth, he's one of these guys that could be a day two pick and be an instant starter for some team. I think he's been really good. And then some of the smaller school wide receivers have been impressive, including Tyron Montgomery, who
Yeah.
every time you watch him, he's just making unbelievable play after unbelievable play, including one on Chris Johnson, a San Diego State cornerback that I love. Ted Hurst is a phenomenal athlete, 6'3", 207, expected to run in the low 4.3s, maybe even get to the 4.2s. And you see it in his stride. Like he
Yeah.
just takes off down the field. I thought he's done a great job against some of these SEC cornerbacks. So between Montgomery and Hurst, pretty good group here.
Yeah, guys that are definitely going to boost their stock. Montgomery's going to be flying up draft boards, I think, after Senior Bowl week. Let's get to it, Marcus. Who is the best overall performer? I know we've seen in the past there's been a correlation in these guys that win that Senior Bowl MVP award tend to go on and do some pretty good things. So who is your Senior Bowl MVP?
Jacob Rodriguez, and there's really no there's really no reason to love him like
Okay.
physically or athletically. He's a linebacker that's 6'1", 230 pounds. He doesn't have long arms. He's likely going to run in the mid 4.7s if he even runs at all. And honestly, if I'm his agent, I'm not letting him run at the NFL Combine. But he's just one of these linebackers, Tommy, that makes every single play. And that's why he was a Heisman Trophy finalist this year, because all he does is fill up the stat sheet. During the Wednesday practice, we saw him have a forced fumble in the team period. He had an interception. You put him one-on-one against these running backs, and you would expect him to get clobbered, in coverage. Not the case. He just knows where to be. He knows how to use his leverage. I think Jacob Rodriguez, physically, you look at him and that's a day 3 pick. Would it shock me if he goes inside the top 40 picks? Not at all, especially not after
Yeah.
what we saw last year with Carson Swessinger from UCLA going to the Browns at the early part of round 2. The NFL needs linebackers, and this guy can absolutely play.
Yeah, there's a linebacker shortage, no doubt. That's one position that it's kind of gone by the wayside, and we need more of those. So I'll be nice. Maybe he will be that next star linebacker in the NFL. Let's talk about the quarterback position, Marcus. All eyes are on the quarterback, obviously, most important position in football. We've seen some really good names go through there in recent years. This year, the quarterback group at the Senior Bowl, maybe not the best. And it's kind of interesting because it's kind of two stories here. You have the kind of the intriguing physical tools type prospects, the Taylon Greens, the Sawyer Robertsons, and then you have guys at the other end of the spectrum, the Garrett Nussmeyers, who some would argue maybe are a little bit maxed out in terms of size and traits. Nussmeyer obviously came in at 6'1" on the dot, 202, doesn't have elite arm talent. What have you noticed from the quarterback group here at the Senior Bowl, and is there a standout to you?
Yeah, well, let's start it with Nussmeier because he's the biggest name
Mhm.
of all the outside of Pavia, but I think Nussmeier's the guy that has the most attention from the
Yeah.
NFL scouts, and you see it like in terms of like technique, he's flawless. I actually think his arm looked way better in Mobile than I even expected, and you see him throwing the ball compared to these other quarterbacks, and his arm certainly doesn't look like a weakness at all. Now, here's the thing: he does not look healthy, and this was kind of the knock
Mm.
on him at LSU this year. By the end of the season, he was so beat up that he probably shouldn't even be playing. And honestly, I'm not sure that he should even be practicing in Mobile, but I think it's so important for him to go out and put some better tape out there. But I think he's been the best quarterback by far. I don't think it's like what we saw last year from Jackson Dart or Tyler Shuck at the Senior Bowl. I still think this is a day 2 quarterback,
Yeah.
but I do think Nussmeier has shown enough to get people excited about him, after the top 40 or 50 picks.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's honestly probably needed that. A good 2024 season, had the down year this year. And when you have some deficiencies to overcome, size wise, arm talent wise, you got to go out there and show yourself. So good on him for doing that. Any other names that intrigue you from here? I've seen a couple of the plays that Taylon Green made. I mean, the arm talent is there. Accuracy kind of all over the place. It's been a little sporadic. Do any of those tools based prospects intrigue you here?
I think Cole Payton from North Dakota State is probably the one that I've liked the most. And he was just a 1-year starter at North Dakota State. He's a lefty, but man, he's got an unbelievable arm. And honestly, I thought he was the best against zone coverage in all of the team drills. Some of the throws he was making were unbelievable, and I know it's easy just to comp him to Michael Penix because it's the left arm
Mhm.
quarterbacks, but he can really drive the football. He's somebody because he doesn't have a lot of experience and he's coming from, I don't want to say a small school because that's unfair to North Dakota State because of how good they've been, but an FCS school
Yeah.
who I think is going to need some time to develop. But I do think there are some traits there that are worth developing. And we've seen almost all of these North Dakota State quarterbacks get drafted, whether it's Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, Easton Stick a couple
Mhm.
years ago, Cam Miller last year. I think Peyton deserves to be the next line of quarterbacks drafted from North Dakota State.
Yeah, for whatever reason, they seem to turn out pretty well. If we're helmet scouting the North Dakota State, they don't always have a lot of passes, though. And I think that's another kind of issue here. Guy that can definitely use to benefit, kind of sit behind a starter and kind of learn the ropes. Anybody else from the quarterback position?
No, it's a pretty weak quarterback class here. And I mean,
It
we
truly
we
is.
knew that. We know
Mhm.
that's a weak quarterback class overall. It's You're gonna have to really squint if you like one of these prospects. I again, outside of Nussmeier and Cole Payton,
Yeah.
it's been a pretty underwhelming group. And again, Pavia has been good in these practices, so I don't want to completely throw him out with the
Mhm.
bathwater here, but I just don't know what you do with that in the NFL.
Exactly. Let's talk about some big risers here. Maybe some of the names that you already mentioned. The Ty Montgomery, the what's first name? It's escaping me right now.
Ted Hurst is one. We've
Yeah.
got yep,
Yes. So,
Tyron
anybody else you
Montgomery.
want to add to that list we didn't touch on yet, Marcus?
Uh, I'll throw out a couple cornerbacks. I think Colton Hood from Tennessee has been a little bit up and down. You see the physical talent. He's really good when the ball is in the air down the field, but he's so grabby that it's you worry about how he's going to transition to the NFL. But I think he's been pretty good. I think Reggie Virgil, a wide receiver from Texas Tech, I thought he's done a really good job releasing off the line of scrimmage in these one-on-one situations. He's probably the best route runner of the group. Uh, it, I'm going to be honest. This is a little bit of a underwhelming group at the Senior Bowl. Just in general, we've seen more talented classes before, but again, the big winners: T.J. Parker, Caleb Banks, Jacob Rodriguez. Those are the guys that I think you're going to see early in drafts and early in mock drafts who are performing well in Mobile.
All right, these practices are obviously important. Stay tuned as we bring you more coverage on that. If you love the NFL draft, you're going to love this channel, Stacking the Box, where NFL fans come to talk, celebrate, and debate. For more coverage, hit up fansided.com. Powered by the passionate fans at FanSided. Marcus is working on scouting reports. Ryan Fowler working on scouting reports for FanSided, and plenty more. So go check those out around the FanSided NFL Network. Marcus, we need to, in closing here, and this is not Senior Bowl related, but we have to talk about just the obliteration, the dismal situation with the Browns' head coaching decision. Something got lost in translation here. Like, who do you not talk to? Obviously, Todd Monken, now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and what we thought was going to happen was Monken was going to be named the head coach, and then he was going to keep Jim Schwartz on. Well, somebody must have forgot to talk to Jim Schwartz, because he was not okay with that. And he's spurning the Cleveland, and he wants to go somewhere else. He doesn't want to be affiliated with that association anymore. What do you make of all this? Do you have any more insight to offer here?
This is a a very difficult coaching search for Cleveland, because you have Jimmy Haslam, who is the owner, and Andrew Berry, the GM, who want completely different things. I think Berry really wanted an offensive mind to kind of help develop whatever quarterback they bring in, whether that's Shador Sanders right now or a guy that they draft this year or next year. They wanted to have somebody in place. And Jimmy Haslam really wanted, more than anything, to keep Jim Schwartz, because he's been a really good defensive coordinator. And it sounds like there was a big push to keep Schwartz as the head coach. But once Andrew Berry pulled a little bit of a power play saying that he's going to leave if they don't hire either
Yeah.
Nate Scheelhaus or Todd Monken, that's when they went back to the offensive side of the ball. It's really unfortunate, Tommy, because I've been a longtime fan of Todd Monken. I thought
Mhm.
he should have got a more head coaching opportunities previously in his career. So I don't think Cleveland hired a bad coach by any
Yeah.
stretch. I actually think they hired a very good coach. And if you told me that you were able to pull off Todd Monken and Jim Schwartz together, that's a really good duo. I think those guys really work together. But I also understand Jim Schwartz and his frustrations of feeling like he got passed over of a job that he's wanted for a while. Do they hold on to him? Do they refuse to let him go coach elsewhere because he is technically under contract? I don't know. I also think there's some other good defensive coordinator options out there if they don't want to wait for a upset Jim Schwartz, but it's just a bad process. We'll see if the result ends up being a good one for Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns tend to do Browns things, and I agree with you. I think that Monken is a good coach, good offensive play caller. if you pair him with Jim Schwartz, you're talking about a great situation. Now you might be trading your brilliant defensive mind for an offensive mind, and we'll see what that does to Myles Garrett and company. The Browns didn't have a top 16 finish with Myles Garrett there until Jim Schwartz got there, and they had a number one defense in the league. So stay tuned. We're going to keep you updated with all of that interesting situation unfolding and around the league with all those 10 head coaching jobs filling up now. We're going to see what happens. We'll bring you more coverage here on that soon. The Stacking the Box show premieres Tuesdays and Thursday evenings. Be sure to check it out. You can follow Marcus's work on the FanSided NFL Network and fansided.com. You can follow Marcus on X at Marcus_Mosher. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Stacking the Box podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Check out my work on stillcurtain.com and Marcus's work again on the FanSided NFL Network, fansided.com. Thanks again for listening.